we will bequeath to future generations. Therefore, it is urgent to build forward better. And this is the premise of recovery from which UNDP starts as the notion of a strategic and multidimensional political response to face the challenges that we have. In our understanding, environmental sustainability, decarbonization, and the path to a green economy must place women at the core, where their contributions to the protection and sustainable management of natural resources and to increasing the climate resilience of communities are recognized and valued, thanks to the management of women, and where it is also emphasized that not leaving women behind and empowering their agency in environmental matters is essential, and they as change agents. And for that, it is essential to achieve the environmental goals and targets that will lead to true sustainable human development, where women are always in the core of that management. In this context, we recognize that in Latin America and the Caribbean, there are unique women who are agents of change and who lead pioneering efforts in various environmental issues and promote gender equality and the empowerment of women throughout diverse ecosystems. Therefore, from UNDP, we created this space of green and violet virtual coffee times to highlight their voices, to listen to their voices, to amplify them, to listen to their vast experiences, and to identify priority actions in the region to promote a social and environmental transformation that recognizes the contributions of women in their diversity and promotes their autonomy. Once again, you are most welcome, dear Luz. To begin this conversation, I would like to hear from you. We're going to have a session of questions and answers, and give us your answers between 3 and 6 minutes each. To start, I would like to ask you, how did you start your trajectory in the empowerment of rural women? What were your main motivations to undertake this work? Well, everything always has some root cause, it has an origin and a motivation. I believe that without being selfish, I need to comment that I come from a very humble home in times where the situation was very tough for us who are rural girls. We didn't have access to education. I myself, I only was able to reach fourth grade in primary school, and that because I was the first one of 9 siblings in a very hard road of work, but that has also made us very strong. And also along the way, we have been able to see or find ways of what we can do for others. Why did this begin? Honestly, since I was little, I've always been thinking, what else can I do for others? I've always been working for my siblings, for my mother, for my family. And then when I was older, I was able to enroll as a community leader here in Pascata since 1988. And then I saw that it was important to do something for women because there was a lot of discrimination, a lot of violence, a lot of abuse towards women, especially in the Amazon region. And that I was able to form the Association of Women of Fatima, which is still here, and we gave it legal personality in 1994, and it's called an UNIFEM. And UNIFEM supported us with the first school of leader women in the Amazons. We still didn't use the word lideresas in Spanish yet. And then later on, with time, the parish boards become legitimate. And since 2000, I have become the president of the parish boards of rural areas. And because I'm the national director, because I used to be director and president in those parish governments. And there we had the first encounter of leader women in Ecuador. And that's where the idea comes from of starting an association. Then we also did the plan of opportunity and equality because it was a call from women. We want knowledge, we want capabilities and skills, we want knowledge. So when we became legitimate in April of 2005 within the UNDP building with Monique San, who was the director at that time, she supported us. So there comes up the opportunity or the need of doing schools of knowledge. And then that plan of opportunities and equalities that came up for the first time, we had a political agenda of rural women. And this is the political agenda that we edited that first time. And then we also managed the funds to do training schools for rural leading women. And we have been working very strongly since then. And I have been convinced that only knowledge can give us true freedom. Only knowledge can allow us to lose the fears. Because since we're small, they've always told us, be careful, don't walk out because, you know, the ghost will catch you. And so they have brought us up with this culture of fear. And that's why it has been necessary to break those habits and those customs and those ways of teaching us how to look at life with fear in order for us to move forward. So as you can see here, before Beijing, we already had a process, and then made this first training school, and women started participating. There was a school for a year, not continuous, but every month or month and a half, there was a different module. And we trained 150 women in the Amazons, and they broke the fears and they became candidates for counselors and others, even, you know, to take on public positions. So that's why with the schools of the AMJUPRE, we have trained women in the entire national territory. And these women, even in January of 2008, in the virtual room of the Salesiana University, the women, we sat them down to use for the first time and learn what a mouse is, what a keyboard is, and to be able to use a computer. And young women of 18 years, they were afraid. They would say, I'm afraid to break the computer. And that was like, you know, we started moving them in that position. That's why we have not stopped in believing that we need to manage these things in order to strengthen the capabilities of women. But the motivation is the need of always doing the best we can for others. Because when we work for women, also, it also means working for their children, their daughters and sons, communities, families, organizations, and society. So everything we do for women will always be in the benefit of the society as a whole, my dear Jose Vicente. Thank you very much, Luz. And the second question is very much related to what you have just shared with us from your life experience, a very powerful testimony. We would like to ask you with a little bit more detail to expand. What was it that inspired you to form the School of Women Leaders? Because that is a critical milestone in your life journey, and it is good. It would be great that for those that are listening to us to know what inspired Luz and what inspired that creation of the School of Women Leaders, Luz. So honestly, the School of Women Leaders was that. It was to strengthen their leadership skills, their citizenship activism, their participation on the community stage, because you have to see them. When I was elected the president of the parish board here in Fatima, because I was part of the candidates for the first time, I had told my other colleagues, we're going to work with women and men. So we summoned the presidents of the communities and we told them, we are going to prioritize the needs of your communities in community sessions. But in every community session, women and men must be there equally in order to give their opinions. So men would scratch their heads and they would say, oh my God, we're doomed. We're going to be governed by skirts. And I would just laugh and say, yes, I am going to govern. And because we have communities of mestizo communities and mixed communities, but I just wanted to tell what happened that day. So after that, I said, I'm sorry. There must be necessary the participation of women as well as men. So we went here to Aurialgo, 5 kilometers from the Paris Center. That was the first visit we made, and we asked, what is the priority hour for you? And men, as if they had agreed on something, they would say, well, the soccer field. And I looked at the women and I said, what's the priority place? And they just moved their heads. I told them, speak up. And they wouldn't. And they said, and I told them, what's happening? And he said, they will get mad if we speak, the women said. And I said, excuse me, but this is a citizenship community activity. Here, we all have to give out our opinion. We need to express our opinions. We're interested in listening to what women think, what you think, what men think. How can you do a public management that can respond to the needs to the entire community? So after that, and in all the other communities, for men, men were the communal center, the soccer field, and the bleachers were important, but the women thought the water, the health, the education, and production were important. So if we analyze the water, the health, the education, and production, who does it benefit? It does not benefit only women, because up until then, the soccer field was specifically for men. Women were only there to support, or for them to be told to go to the kitchen. Remember, even those, supporting uh, the women supporting the soccer matches. So the inspiration has always been how to potentiate and strengthen the human talent of women, how to untie those knots from the brains and, the voices, not for them to become rebellious and for negative things, but to empower women, because empowering means to give power. And how do you give power? First, by giving knowledge. But in order to get to knowledge, you need to listen to women. You need to listen to ourselves. We need to allow them to let go of their pains, their bitterness, their frustrations, so that that brilliance or that glow can come up and spring into their eyes. So that has been a strong motivation for me. The fact that women need to have knowledge, even if they haven't completed elementary school, or maybe they went to the first course and weren't able to come back again. But this knowledge given through these training schools, for me, was like, how can I say it? It's like, that thing that motivates them, that pushes them, that strength that can allow them to even start giving out their opinions in their community sessions. But how could they do it? They weren't able to go to school. They couldn't be able to go to high school. Some of them did, because some people were looking at me because I was able to finish my elementary school as an adult in the Quito school when I had to escape from home. So, because as a young child, I had to work to sustain my family. And, I had to run away to do that. So, those life experiences made me also think of other people, not only of me. So, I also began my high school degree when I was married and I was over 35 years. I already had my kids. And so I had to question myself, what am I going to do? Am I going to study and I'm going to take away the bread on top of the table instead of giving food to my children? And I need to buy school supplies. And I had to convince myself. And I said, even if I don't buy myself one single blouse or shirt, I am going to enroll in school. And even if I'm not able to afford a pair of shoes, I'm going to buy my school supplies, because that was my right, my need. So those things also help us to visualize outward and to understand what the problematic of women is. And why, Jose Vicente? Because when I turned around, and it doesn't sound nice to say it, but for the school, I had to contract a taxi because UNIFEM gave us resources, and the where we spent most was for transportation. I had to pay for a taxi, and if you know, for Pastaza, it is the largest province in Ecuador, and fortunately, it's the one that has the biggest or largest forest reserve, because the 5 parishes, and for example, it's so big, and and the only way to come in is through Canelos to go to the Sadayaco community, to the parish of Sadayaco, because everything else you can only access by air travel. There is no other way. So we had to think of how to be able to balancing that scale so that women could also, in middle of the difficulties, to have a greater openness and a greater uh, availability of themselves, not to hurt anybody, but to generate these changes. And even when I decided to study, I said, because I want to be a better mother, a better wife, and a better citizen. I wasn't thinking of getting an adventure, because I only wanted to be a better person. And hopefully I've done that in order to be able to justify that somehow of be able to sacrificing time of being with my children. So those have been the motivations of the training schools, which are not academic schools, by the way, but it does have a lot to do with personal growth. And a lot has to do with the shared experiences, and listening the experiences of one, we can strengthen the others, because each person is a different world and every person has his own life experiences, and we can have a lot of wisdom from what we learn in the school of life along the way, or whatever, even in the most distant community of Ecuador or the world. So I was telling them when they went to the first school, there was only one doctor, female doctor, and two women engineers in Pastata. And I would say to them, you who are cultured, you need to adapt to the simpleness of the women who are illiterate, and you need to adapt. So when I went to the parishes with the tax and then wearing my rubber boots and my, rubber cap to find women, many of them, they would say, no, just allow my son or my husband to go, or well, even maybe my daughter, some of them would say. And I would say, why are you saying that, friend? I know you are a woman director of a community. And she would came and very shamefully said, well, I don't know how to read and write. And I told her, but you have a brain and you can speak, you have eyes, you have ears, you have talent. Come, come, take the advantage of this school. And of course, I went back to Unifem and I said, can I do that? And they would say, do whatever you want. You're the leader. Do what you think is best. And to a vice mayor of Kitty, she was the political coordinator, and she would say, they supported me to do the project, and I appreciate that. I thank them, Silvia Vega and others. But she told me, Luz, this is a leader's school. And I told her, you don't know how things are in Pastas or Amazon, the Amazon. Allow me to do things, because one thing is to be in Tulcan because she's in Tulcan, or to be in Quito, but it's a whole different thing to be in the Amazon. So please just allow me to do things. So I have also had to be able to break those knots, even sometimes within the process of women themselves, because we can have a very urban vision and to not understand what is going on within the rural communities, right? So the motivations have always been to allow women to grow, how to make women have their own voices, for women to be a reference point in the communities, for women to be seen and considered for decision making, for women to have voices in media because they have been placed on TV and radio. So the idea and the dream was that. So it hasn't been one, but several motivations of how to make it for people to grow inside and to grow in wisdom, which they have it accumulated, but we had just have to give them new opportunities, dear Jose Vicente. Luz, what a rich and warm life experience. It is a testimony that Luz is, telling us on, she has been struggling and breaking down barriers to not only have her, but also her colleagues and people from the Amazon, women specifically, to advance in this, road that is so full of obstacles. Luz, we also know that there is an initiative that is very emblematic and very current with the situation of the pandemic. And we would love to hear from you on that initiative, from confinement to empowerment. What have been the greatest challenges that you have faced, and the rural women in Ecuador and in the world are still facing in the context of the pandemic? Please, Luz. Yes, well, time has allowed us to live many years. So now I am the young person before. I am 72, I'm almost 73, and I have been fortunate because not everybody reaches my age. And so that's something also to be grateful for. With all this, live trajectory and schools and organizations, because I've formed several and I have, joined others and I have initiated several processes, and that motivates me, and it, just fills me with a lot of hope, and like Dolores Acajuango, Matilde Hidalgo, and everybody we could mention, but especially Dolores Cajuango and Francia Maguaño. When I started reading, when I went to the first course and I went to study, and I have been able to start finding myself with these historical women, because beforehand I didn't know that. But all this, what could we call it? This is the accumulated seed of the years that I have been working on along the way, led us to believe that during the pandemic, we could not just, stick with our hands crossed. They could paralyze us because of the government dispositions, because of, precautions, but we could not tie our brains and hearts. So we felt that, or we believed that if Luz Haro, that, rural woman that stood up as, without the help of anyone, but with a lot of effort to be able to finish school and go finish high school and then go to the university, and many things to do because I have been studying since I was 35 until 70. So how to truly make it to be possible to accompany these women, because if I felt this, difficult times of the COVID times, what was happening with the women in the Amazon, in Ecuador, and in the world. And so that's why we began. And of course, for that, I need to be honest and to understand the leadership that is coming from other potential women. Leader of the rivers, a female leader of the rivers, had asked me from September or October in 2019. She asked me, help me do something about the rivers. And I said, yes, of course. But when the pandemic starts, she calls me and she says, Mami Luz, that's how people call me. Some call me Mama Luz, some call me Mamita Luz, some call me Mami Luz. They call me in different names. And what can we do now with the pandemic? Now we can't do anything anymore in the rivers. I said, let's do a virtual school. Let's do a virtual school. So that's where, this comes up. Well, everything we have already done with the entire, trajectory. And in the end, if the social service career serves people, because it's not remunerated work, but it's work done because of passion, commitment, just because we love it and we feel good about it, it's, very few times it is paid for or remunerated. So it's been good and useful to have contacts and have friends. So I was coming from the process of the electoral process, and we had friends and also a founder of some of the associations. So I said, Berito, we're not alone, I told her. And we're not going to let women on their own. Not you nor I are alone, and we're not just going to leave them. So let's make a virtual school. But where are the funds? Where can we find the money? Let's find people that can help us with a platform. And I said, yeah, I'm going to see who can help us with Zoom. But Zoom, turns off every 40 minutes. Well, it doesn't matter. We just reconnect after 40 minutes. So it was, something like that. And then that's where we truly began. And I said, how do we do it? And I said, calm down. We're going to find our strategic partners. I have a strong group, and we made a group of trainers. It's 8 or 10 people that we accompany the first school that we started. We thought about it between March. She didn't call me in March. I think she called me at the end of March. But then in April, we started, shaping this, looking at which modules we were going to include, how we were going to address this, who we were going to work with. And in May, we shaped it even further. And in June of 2020, June 3rd, we started with the first class with self-esteem and leadership. And we said, and the name of the school is going to be From Confinement to Empowerment, because this school was of politics, of leadership women. It wasn't only rural. There, I told Veronica, Berito, by being supported by the red black, because I'm not in Ampupre because I was out for a long time. I said, I'm going to support you, but I'm going to support you as Red Black, or the Latin American and Caribbean Network of Rural Women. And there we started looking at trying to find the contacts to working on that. And we started with self-esteem and leadership. And there I was myself part of that module, and we modestly and humbly, did the modules with slides and with that. And every 40 minutes, the session was out, and we would have to tell people to reconnect. And that's how we managed through until later on. I think that for the second month, a leader from here of the Amazon, Lucia Rodriguez, now she's the coordinator of the nonviolence law, she said, I have a friend that can support us with the platform, and she's part of the school. So we spoke with Patricia de Orellana, and she has facilitated her Zoom platform that didn't, kick us out. So it is an addition of different wills. So the speakers have been guest speakers, and on the other hand, also are seeing female leaders, because the school doesn't necessarily have to be completely scientific or academic, but only conceptual. Well, yes, conceptual and theoretical, but also life lessons. So our leaders, our female leaders, have been also speakers. So we opened it up for rivers, and then we opened it up for 18 provinces of Ecuador. So it was for Rios, and in Chile, they're doing, it'll be the venue for the other one, but there were great reasons to do that. And she said, okay. And this is where we have done this school where they participated intermittently, about 180 people, but 150 were permanent. And among them, we had a very specific or special case. And I'm going to tell you about a woman from the Rios, and and I said I love it, and I pushed for having not only urban women but also rural women. And this woman, Julia Montese, she would walk out with her cell phone and she would say, I don't have internet at home, but I'm walking around to see where I can pick up the signal. And she would walk throughout the mountain, or the plantain fields, to see where she could get some signal to connect, whether it was raining or not, or she would cover herself with some plastic to connect to school. So those things have truly, been worthwhile. And from confinement to empowerment, I insist, because it was for political women. And from them, from the ones that have participated, now we have two women in the assembly and one. So we have seen results. And some have been, exchanging with other schools. That's the first experience. And that was closed on December 9th of 2020. The second school is done specifically for rural leading women, where we do have the supporting techniques of countries. It was applied for 17 countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, from Chile up to Mexico. But it was called From Confinement to Empowerment, the Rural Women School of Red Lac, From Confinement to Empowerment and Territorial Development. But the important thing of the school, the second one, is now eh, is to support the political agenda of the Red Lac. And this political agenda has some thematic axes that used to be five, now they are six. We have included additionally the climate change one and taking care of nature. So the School of Red Lac began as self-esteem, leadership, and identity. That's where we started. And then we have all the other themes, and we have added climate change. This school began from September 22 of 2020, and it was concluded when and we did that a month ago, this training school. And we have began with the second stage of Ecuador. This is the third time we're undertaking the schools. And but this school of Ecuador, now we have 300 enrolled. But it's not only Chile and Panama. Now we have El Salvador, we have Peru. There are other countries adding on. And the women and the testimony that they have given us is, what a blessed school. Hadn't it been for this process, I don't know what would have happened to us. because we have even talked about confinement, we have talked about violence, we have talked about citizen and political participation. In the case of our school and its production, life, water, violence, rights, citizenship, participation of women, community participation in climate change, and self-esteem, leadership, and identity. So all this has been, I think, very comforting for women. But an important thing that can also be added here is how the exchange of women from the different countries, because the panel speakers have also been from Colombia. We invited our friend from Costa Rica, Mr. Victor Hugo, from the Institute of Democracy, and he's the authority in the electoral part of Costa Rica. He's one of our panel speakers, Jolima Carillo from Colombia, Rita from Argentina. So we have had different guests. And what have we done? The friends that we have achieved along the way that life has given us and has been generous with them, we have been able to put them as speakers. And on the other hand, I insist, because school is a combination of theory and practice, and this is the way we have worked, and this is very motivating, and it fills our hearts with this, because we could have just sat down with our hands or arms crossed and say, what a pity we cannot do anything. But that's not true. You know that the brain, the passion, the heart, the passion that you feel, because you need to fall in things, you fall in love with things, you need to love the things you do. And what I've said is that in these schools, nobody charges anything, nobody pays anything, because we can also give to people who want to take advantage of the processes that can be done. So we need to be, careful on that. And we have warned that nobody pays, nobody charges. But what we do want is for women to be replicators of their knowledge in their own languages and dialects, in their communities, in their organizations. And that's what we have been achieving. Now, if we had 180 people from the first school of Latin America and the Caribbean, it's about 200 plus 300 who are enrolled right now. Now you can see the numbers of women that are increasing. And those are the ones that are more permanently participating. There are many that, because, now everything is recorded in Zoom, because the Red Lag School was with Zoom, which had a supporting, technique, because it was Eleonora from Santiago de Chile. She is the one giving us that platform. Monica, I met her with my studies of the Ibero-American School of Community Workers, because now I am part of the board, not because I will have been a mayor, but concejala, but I joined as a student, and I entered for a specialty in gender in 2011. And then I ended up graduating in the third summit in Santiago de Chile on 2016, because I ended up doing my master's degree with them, and it was virtual. So we wanted that, uh, although there were gaps and difficulties, and maybe that's something we can talk about later on, about the inequalities of on devices and connectivity, but somehow we are, exercising that right, because also UN, they tell us, don't stay behind, learn. And that's what we have established with the learning schools. Thank you, Luz. Fantastic to understand all that transforming power that is there is great in such adverse circumstances. And just like you say, you need to open up your hearts, and you need to open up your minds and brains. And this is great that it's a collective exercise that involves and engages hundreds of women in such a difficult stage like the pandemic. And just in line to what you were mentioning, what are the gaps? And I would like to invite you to tell us, from the rural areas, what challenges are there for rural women in matters of gender and environment? In your experience, how have these experiences advanced and made progress with the initiatives as the training of Red Lac? Well, the challenges are never over. As long as we're still alive, when we wake up in the morning, my first challenge is not to complain about the day. I always have to thank God for this new day. So that's already a challenge when each day starts. And when we close the day, to give thanks for the day I have lived, and I'm gonna rest, to put my energies to rest and start out the next day if God allows me to. So the great challenges, honestly, have been and continue being: first, it was very rich to get together, to strengthen each other, and to cry, because even if we were at the virtual school, we have cried, we have shared, and people have, let go of their critical knots. And I think that cleansing the soul, because, tears aren't weakness. Tears are the way of cleaning the soul and the pains of women, not only for women, but also men. I have three sons and eight grandchildren and a granddaughter, and I told them, cry, cry, because, you know, tears are to cleanse pain. So the big challenges, so the great challenges is to continue with these virtual processes. As long as this pandemic continues, we're not going to stop. And one of the results of these schools is that, interestingly enough, sometimes I have shared with my friends and even with Andrea, sometimes I tell her, look at this, and thank you also, Andrea, for supporting us in the forum, the closing forum of climate change. Very, very beautiful. People were very, very happy. It was like, having taking a shower with really fresh water. So I think that the process continues calling us, what else can we do? It's not that it's already done. And as long as we continue living, there's always more things to do. So the virtual processes are going to continue. Maybe we can start doing something later on, something between, classes in person and also in virtual. We have done that in Chile, but it has not given us great results. However, we do believe that we need to do that at some point, according or depending on how the health progress and vaccination um, moves. And there was something I was going to say, but I forgot it. And if I remember it, I'll mention it later. But the process of the school is going to continue. And it was this: suddenly I received a call from a representative of one of the international cooperations. I sent her the link school at some point, and she said, "You know what? I have been following you, and I'm excited to see that you never get tired of doing things." And she said, and I told her, "Yeah, as long as we're alive, we need to do our best." And she said, "And why don't you do a project, a proposal?" And so right now we are designing a project, and it will be a pilot project for some countries, for 5 countries, Ecuador, and 4 more. And I hope that that comes up. But also, suddenly, and the university came up and they told us we can endorse the Ecuadorian school. Unfortunately, there wasn't the backup of the president of Amhupre, and we lost that agreement with the university, which could have been endorsed by the Uniandes. Uniandes wanted to support. But unfortunately, sometimes, no matter how much we, sow the best seeds, not all the, fruit will be the same. Maybe I sow, maize or corn, and maybe not all the plants that grow aren't going to be the best ones, and it'll never be the best harvest. Some beautiful fruits, some more or less, and some bad quality ones. The same thing happens for formative or teaching processes, because everybody can give them a different use. So unfortunately, sometimes they're lost, and that's the risk we run. That's another challenge. So I think that only when the person that doesn't do anything, and sometimes when something bad happens, how lucky the ones that do anything, because that's the only way I can find relief, because, the people that just don't do anything, nobody criticizes them, and, they just, nothing happens. So I think that the virtual processes will continue as long as we can continue doing them as Red LAC. We promote and encourage for other people to join, and even from different continents. Sometimes the language can be limiting. So when Brazil comes in, so the Brazilian colleagues, when they come, remember the teaching of our founder, she said, speak slowly. And if we speak slowly, we can understand each other between the people that speak Portuguese and the people that speak Spanish. But of course, there are other languages that maybe we cannot have the same ease to speak. But hopefully, in the future, we could help us with translation in English to go into the Caribbean and Haiti and these countries. I wish we could have some financing for that. Providence maybe, reserving some funds around. So I think that among the challenges, it is to continue with the teaching processes. We cannot, um, let go of things. And on the other hand, we also need to work on the gaps. The thing is that for the school that we want to implement in the future with this project is to have our own platform, so that classes can be given in a specific schedule, and those that cannot access in those hours can then join in a different schedule so that they can still capture the knowledge. And that's a great challenge. They can capture that knowledge and they can be able to fulfill their tasks. And in that way, we can generate that new way of reaching more women. We trust that this can be achieved in the year 2021. We practically have less than 6 months, actually 5.5 months, but every day counts. And what comes from 2022 as well. So the challenges is to continue with the schools, to fight or struggle against, you know, connections and connectivity. And another challenge is how to do it. Because notice, Jose Vicente, how in Ecuador we did a webinar where we basically complained about what happened in Ecuador, where they did a campaign from the state saying that learning is pretty with the support of tutors, but also from family. First, if a mother, as I, is half illiterate, how can she understand to support her children? Number two, how if in the rural areas there's one computer and in some cases they don't even have connectivity, how can they do it? And if they have 3 or 4 children, because in rural areas that's where they have more children, how can they spend time and in order to do homework? So these are the great challenges that even the women that have been able to start getting those goals, that have been hard, they would say, I got disconnected, now I reconnected, I can't do it. And so, the Red Lac team has been recording and doing things, and women are starting to become more equal, but we would like to have our own platform that can allow us to store the knowledge. That's another one of our big challenges in order to make progress in this field. The other thing is to reach more women. We cannot just stick to the female leaders that are consolidated, but we need to always know how to get where nobody has reached, how to reach those women and youth and little girls and adolescent girls. And forgive me for saying this, and this is a very hard topic, and it breaks my heart that still, and it didn't happen only 65 years ago when I was a teenager, but sometimes, unfortunately, in the rural communities, you trade the life of a daughter for a little bit of food, the life of a sister, the life of a creature, of a young child. And that needs to change. That's why we need to reach more people. It's not possible because sometimes, because of a plate of food or because of a liquor bottle, you need to break a life that has the right of protecting itself, of developing, of living with dignity, of having another quality of life. So I think that there's still a lot of work to be done because it seems like a lie, but it still happens in Pasas, it still happens in the Amazon region, and it maybe still happens in other countries like El Salvador, Peru, and any of the other countries. So we believe that we cannot just stop because as long as we still have life in our bodies, we are also responsible for what happens outside. Change begins inside, but when once I have been able to help myself and study and done, now what am I going to do for the rest of people, male and female? So those are some of the greatest challenges at a personal level. And at the red flag level, we will continue working hard. And an important aspect is how we have also been trying to open up doors so that our base women can be able to go to the events. How, Jose Vicente? The first rural women panel in the third summit gender panel in Chile, Flavia, and I said, let's do an event for rural women. She said, Luz, okay, but give me 3 women and I will give you a forum of rural women and I can help you with Bolivia. And now she's in WEM, but thanks to Flavia, we opened up that door. And there weren't 3, there were 8 or 10 rural women where we had to put a panel of 6. I led that panel, and the other ones, we had to place them in other panels. So that's the way we can truly make it and achieve it, that the women that have a positioning in the community can have a good positioning in the province, in the country, in the region, Latin America, Caribbean, and also in the world, because we have also allowed them to go to Spain, in other spaces. One of the women that was trained in Hopeless, she spoke to the ambassador and she got a scholarship to Israel and also Washington. Another one was sent to Mesoamerica. Some have been in Uruguay, in Paraguay, in Peru. So in other words, we are making it possible for our women. And I'm going to tell you another story. It's wonderful. When we were calling a lady for Santiago to Chile. Her name is of the San Jacinto Comunas. Jose Vicente is Ecuadorian. He understands our reality. The day she had to travel to Quito next day, her husband, hides her luggage. And one of the children saw where the dad had hid the luggage. And he goes and he gets her luggage so that she is able to travel. And she takes away her sense and he tells her, you cannot go. And she still walks and she asks people to borrow her, to give her money so she could borrow to travel. But she had her big, large cardboard of crafts because she doesn't only work on the field, but she also works on her crafts, arts and crafts. And look, all dear colleagues and Guillermina, Andrea, Jose Vicente, and people that are listening to us. When we got there, we hadn't thought or planned a place for Teresa Rodas to sell her arts and crafts. We hadn't planned that. But then she said, Mama Luz, talk to whomever you want, please, so that I can get a space to sell my things. And so I approached Flavia Tello, and she worked 17 years in the WEM. And I think since 2018, she's not there. She's in the Organization of American States. I told her, Flavia, querida, she has brought her arts and crafts. Can you help us to give her a small corner for her to sell her things? And she said, let me see what I can do. So the room was very large. It was very large in the upper part, and that's where all the plenaries were there. And when you would walk down the stairs in the area downstairs, Flavia was able to give her a table in the center of the aisle so that Teresa could sell her arts and crafts. And Teresa was able to come back home with money. So how can you do it so that what our women can produce can be valued and sold and appreciated by other women, not only from Ecuador, but also around the world. So that's also something that we have been able to do in different events. I think that there are many challenges. It's like having more networks, having more points of contact, how to have new strategic partnerships, how to open up the doors to the world. Jose Vicente. Not now. Now we do have the door open up to Spain. As Iberoamerica, we have a link with Spain, with the FEMUR, with the Rural Women Network, FEMUR in Spain. But how to set up more bridges to be able to reach other continents. And I think that those are the great challenges that we have and we face. And maybe later on we can talk about the greatest challenge we have. And then thanks to UNDP, I think it's going to be our showcase to the world. Thank you very much, Luz. What a pleasure to listen to all that. It's impressive. And at the same time, it's very, something that raises so much concern with everything we need to face in these intersectionalities. And it has been multiplied and augmented in the different communities. And there comes another question. Tell us what types of circumstances or elements are necessary so that you can also look at the continuous progress of rural women, but also the protection of environment. Tell us, how can we achieve that together? Yes, we as Red Lag, the Latin American and Caribbean Network of Rural Women since 1996 in Fortaleza, Brazil, our founders and ideologists, we need to work on the land and also take care of nature at the same time, and to take care of the rivers and the sources of water, of how we should not reforest with any, foreign plant that can suction water and that might kill water instead of generating water and life, how we need to take care of the different areas, because we need to produce with healthy seeds without so many chemicals. And that's why Jose Vicente in the Red Lag, among the thematic axis, we need to water, life, and death, life production and work. So we rural women naturally have always been the guardians of nature, the guardians. So small productions or farms are what protect forests, are what protect nature. They protect healthy seeds, traditional seeds. The great production is what we get from hybrids, from having a micro production. It doesn't matter if the seed is lost, the millenary seed. And unfortunately, then we depend on the market to then buy seeds that are hybrid and need different treatments and have already been exposed to chemicals. So because of all that, we and we would like to have more awareness and better public policies that can support small farm production, because in the end, who is caring of the small children? She uses the word guaguas for small children in Ecuador, and she's explaining that for younger children, they call it guaguas, because this change of dialect also sometimes creates confusions, she said. But I believe that from the public policies, they must have a component that is more human, more natural. And there's, the term domestic, and not so much just thinking about how to make money. So look at Ecuador in the coast. You can see the great, shrimp farms. They go against mangroves. And, that doesn't happen from the small producers. That comes from transnationals. It comes from macro production. While women, as Marinelli Torres, who is one that has sustained the topic of defending mangroves, and there is a huge organization of women there, but also behind that. But unfortunately, they say, I'm going to plant or sow 1 million plants. And I see that if they have eucalyptus or pine trees, that would be like killing nature here, because that would be killing the life of water. And one of the things that we have seen that has happened in the pandemic, and we have promoted that from the schools in Ecuador as well as in the Red Lac area, excuse me, is how women in the middle of the pandemic have been able to continue producing on our fields healthy products, fresh products. And these have been led or taken by the daughters and granddaughters to the different places to be sold, while we veterans cannot move because of our age, because they say we are at high risk because of our health, but because there has been this chain or production chain and sale, and sometimes even the exchange of products or the trading of products. So we have been promoting first to value the work of the humble people in the field, especially women, where many of them are the heads of household. They stay with their sons and daughters. And, and another topic that we have promoted very strongly from these training schools is the topic that we need to generate and foster reciprocity between urban and rural areas. This means that when we go to the big malls, everybody goes and pays at the cashier, what the price is. Nobody barters. But when humble people sell their products on the street or in front of their house, and also they get harassed by municipal police, we humble them, we mistreat them, and we always ask for a better price. But we don't reduce for, we don't tell them, so we never ask for a lower price for Coca-Cola, but we ask for a lower price for milk, fresh milk. And it has nothing to do with health. Actually, they are harmful to health, like Coca-Cola. So I think that there's things like this that need to be, raised awareness on, and that we women need to be behind that, rurally and in urban areas as well. We don't ask for discounts, value the product that we are taking to sell to our houses or to different neighborhoods. I think that that's also to promote, to have humble women or rural women to stay in the rural areas and not be forced to travel to the city to do just about anything, or to extend the chain of misery in big cities, which is what sometimes happens because the suburban neighborhoods don't have the elite. It normally has the people that have migrated from the urban areas in the outskirts of cities. And that happens everywhere. So they say that in New York, we can find people, sleeping under the bridges. But this can also happen in the relationship between urban and rural society. There needs to be awareness, and there needs to be human, political, and technical awareness of decision makers to support with marketing chains, but not of intermediation that sections consumers and exploits and takes advantage of producers. Thank you very much, Luz. Honestly, many reflections, many testimonies, many messages that start showing us the way on how we can keep moving forward in this decade, which is special for rural women. We want to especially or greatly thank all those recommendations that you have given us, Luz, with your life testimony, where you have shown us that it's possible to start, breaking down some barriers with a lot of sacrifice, but with a very ingenious and smart way of, for example, moving from confinement to empowerment, and to have a group of women that have been able to be trained and with great results, such as access to dignity. This is very inspiring, Luz, and I honestly feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity to inaugurate these coffee times with your great presence, your great contribution, and your great testimony. So I think that we would like to thank. Uh, Unfortunately, time is up. How bad, because I wish I could have been able to talk about finally about the support for the reciprocity between urban and rural areas, and in the framework of SDGs and the 2030 agenda, to have that support of United Nations that have received our documents since 2012, 2017, 2018, to ask to declare the decade of rural women. No matter what the color of our skin are, all of us rural women, whether they're white, mestizo, or Afro descendants, whoever we are, but to declare the decade of the rural women as we gave Mrs. Bachelet when she was the General Secretary of the United Nations. We gave it to her in Ecuador in 2012 in Rio de Janeiro. And there we had the third encounter of Latin America with 270 rural women of 16 countries, including Guinea-Bissau. And we have also submitted in 2018 on March 12th in New York. We also submitted the formal request in front of the 62 assemblies of the United Nations to declare the decade of rural women. And I don't think that there would be a better, you know, reward, or there couldn't be a better way of giving back life and hope and joy and a permanence and love to land, and that we can continue working on this to declare this in the pandemic and post-pandemic the decade of rural women. I think that 2021 and 2022 needs to be the starting point of a before and an after. 10 years, I think, is little, but I think it'll be something to give back to the women on the fields, all the social debt that was there since the SDGs. And I know there's been a lot of work done, but the local governments maybe have done little, and we need to continue working on that. And we would like to join us in the continents, in each one of the continents, in Europe and Asia and and even Latin America, to have a common strength to declare it the decade of rural women, not only in Ecuador and Latin America, but also in the world. And that would allow us to turn the page and to allow a dignified life and with goods and services of high quality for rural women. Thank you very much. Your message is very clear. That need for reciprocity from rural to urban is core. And what a better way of making it possible and making an echo than declaring a decade of rural women. I think it's a fantastic proposal for this to mark a before and an after. Thank you so much. And before concluding or closing, I would like to remind you that our next Green and Violet Coffee Time, the voices of Latin American women that protect and transform our environment, will be on August 6th. And we will have the participation of Brigitte Baptiste, the director of the University of EAN. I hope that you enjoyed this very much, just like I have enjoyed this very much. So see you on August 6th. And thank you very much, Luz. A great rest of the day. Goodbye. A very warm hug to all my brothers and sisters in all the Americas and Ecuador and Europe. Thank you, United Nations. Thank you, UNDP. Thank you, Guillermina. Thank you, everyone. 1,000 thanks. And I think that before I die, I will be able to see the decade of rural women. Thank you, José Vicente, Andrea, and everyone. Thank you very much. And support us so that we can come close to ONU women or UN women.